Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Esmeralda Richiez. Esmeralda Richiez Martinez was born on August 23, 2006, in La Alta Gracia, Dominican Republic, to restaurant owners Alio Rosti and Isabel Martinez. She grew up in a happy and close-knit family with an older sister, and the two were extremely friendly. As Esmeralda grew older, she blossomed into a bright and beautiful young woman. She was passionate about singing, dancing, and showcasing her artistic talents on social media. In her senior year of high school in 2023, Esmeralda, also known as Marala, was a popular and cheerful student who was surrounded by friends. One of her close friends was 35-year-old John Kelly Martinez, a new teacher at her school. John Kelly had recently entered the public education system after passing a competitive teacher's exam and was undergoing a one-year probationary period. He quickly won over his students with his friendly approach, treating them like peers and organizing regular outings outside of school. John, a married teacher and father of two, prioritized his students over his family. He spent most of his free time with them, building trust and relationships. Esmeralda was one of these bright and beautiful students. On the evening of February 12, 2023, John met with his female students, including Esmeralda, outside of school. He picked her up last and introduced himself as her teacher, promising to drive her home afterward. They joined two other men and two female students, and John drove them to the beach in his car. Everyone except John and Esmeralda got out of the car when they arrived. The two of them spent some time alone before joining the others. They drank a few beers and took a short walk along the beach. However, their evening was cut short when Esmeralda suddenly fell ill and started bleeding. They had to rush her back home. The next morning, her parents found her dead. The autopsy revealed that she was murdered, leaving her parents with unanswered questions. The National Institute of Forensic Medicine initially concluded that Esmeralda Richiez's death was caused by a severe internal bleeding and hemorrhagic shock resulting from a perineal laceration. However, following a thorough autopsy, the final classification of her death was undetermined. What led to such a tragic event when Esmeralda was accompanied by friends and a supervising teacher? The investigation shed light on the events. Police interviews with Esmeralda's friends and a review of their phones revealed crucial clues, leading to the identification of a suspect. One of Esmeralda's friends, who had been with the teacher and Esmeralda that evening, provided a shocking testimony. She claimed to have seen the professor secretly add 5 pills to Esmeralda's drink while they were at the beach. The initial police findings sparked widespread speculation in the Dominican Republic, where abortion is illegal. Many theories emerged about the cause of Esmeralda's death, with some believing she died of a heart attack, and others speculating that she bled to death due to abortion pills allegedly given to her by John Kelly. The medical examiner's report was expected to put an end to rumors and speculation. However, when the forensic examination results were released, speculation only ceased for a brief moment. Esmeralda's relatives were shocked and skeptical when they learned the results, which ruled out pregnancy. The family was unhappy with the report's conclusion because it contradicted their theory, which was supported by the investigation's findings and evidence. Previously, an examination of Esmeralda's friends' phones had uncovered numerous text messages hinting at the teacher's long-standing interest in the student, but these clues were indirect. After a failed pregnancy, an investigation found that John Kelly drugged a girl without her consent and violently assaulted her on the beach, causing severe blood loss. A few hours later, Esmeralda, died. Toxicology test results were still pending. Based on the evidence, the prosecutor's office requested that John Kelly Martinez and his alleged accomplice, Ruben Murillo Martinez, be detained, as they are the main suspects in Esmeralda's death. As a result, John Kelly Martinez was suspended from his teaching position for 90 days without pay due to the evidence against him. The prosecutor's office also requested that John Kelly be held in preventive detention for a year as the primary suspect in Esmeralda's death. To clarify, preventive detention is not a punishment for a crime, but rather a measure to prevent the person from committing further crimes while the investigation continues. New investigations, including fresh episodes and eyewitness interviews, have deepened the mystery surrounding the student's tragic death. Despite multiple stops during the journey to tend to her severe bleeding, neither the individuals assisting her nor the entire company took the crucial step of calling emergency services or rushing her to the hospital. Several stops made by the defendants were captured on surveillance cameras. Witnesses reported that they purchased alcohol and that Esmeralda and John went to the restroom together. They also visited a pharmacy to buy medication, water, and feminine hygiene products. It was later discovered that Esmeralda had to change her clothes completely at one of the stops because they were soaked in blood. After Esmeralda was dropped off at home, her parents noticed she was bleeding heavily. Assuming it was related to her menstrual cycle, her mother gave her a painkiller to help her fall asleep. One of Esmeralda's cell phones revealed that she had sent an audio message to a friend in the early morning hours, pleading for help and saying, "Please help me, I'm bleeding." Unfortunately, the friend didn't hear the message until it was too late. The next day, Esmeralda was found unresponsive on her bathroom floor, covered in blood. On February 14th, John Kelly Martinez was arrested, and his home was searched the following day. The clothes he wore on the night in question were seized during the search. Additionally, his cousin, Ruben Murillo, was accused of trying to hide John's bloody pants. The investigation into the event has been plagued by ambiguities. Rather than fueling speculation, the prosecutor's office should have provided clarity on the circumstances surrounding the young girl's death, which had alarmed the public and sparked demands for a thorough and high-quality investigation. Many people felt that the investigation had missed crucial evidence, including a thorough search of the teacher's home and car, which were potential crime scenes. The authorities quickly requested to examine the car, but John Kelly's wife sold it soon after, raising suspicions that she was trying to hide evidence. The car's new owner was Panaga Pillar. Only when the authorities threatened to take action against J.C. Espinal Rowe, John Kelly's wife, and Frank Panaga for their alleged involvement in the case did they finally inspect the car. Although they found traces of Esmeralda's blood, no other significant evidence was discovered. The court decided that there was not enough evidence to keep J.C. Espinal Rowe in jail, so she was released. The investigation continued for several months. The prosecutor reopened the case, re-interviewing the three girls who had been with Esmeralda that night. Their testimony helped investigators piece together the events of that night, minute by minute. At 7:30 p.m., John Kelly Martinez, 35, and his cousin Ruben Murillo Martinez went to Esmeralda's home in La Otra Banda Igay with the three girls in the passenger compartment of the car. John, posing as Esmeralda's teacher, coaxed her away from her mother, promising an exciting evening with her classmates. Initially, the plan was to take the group to an amusement park, but John changed his mind en route and chose a new destination. It's likely that John had no intention of going to the amusement park and instead opted for a quiet evening at Mile Beach. During the drive, John stopped at a store to buy a beer and asked his brother to move to the back seat, allowing Esmeralda to sit in the front. John had a thermos with him, which he filled with beer and secretly added 5 unknown pills. He offered the drink to Esmeralda without warning her about the pills, but one of her friends noticed this when they arrived at the beach. The three girls left the car, leaving Esmeralda alone with John. They spent about 30 minutes alone in the car, which didn't go unnoticed by Esmeralda's friends. Suddenly, John emerged and instructed everyone to get back in the car, claiming they needed to leave urgently. During their journey, they had to make multiple stops due to Esmeralda's heavy bleeding. One of these stops occurred at 9:45 when they pulled into a gas station parking lot. There, Esmeralda visited the restroom in the cafeteria, as confirmed by eyewitness accounts and CCTV footage. Esmeralda's classmate reported that she asked to stop at a gas station because she needed to use the restroom. When Esmeralda went in with her friends, they were shocked to see that her clothes were covered in blood. The restroom was also heavily blood-stained, requiring they to mop the floor. They were frightened and asked the gas station attendant if this was normal, and she told them it was not, and that they needed to take Esmeralda to the doctor right away. They told John Kelly, Esmeralda's teacher, about the situation, but he refused to take her to the hospital, fearing he would be arrested. An investigation later confirmed that Esmeralda's blood was found in the parking lot and restroom at the gas station. Surveillance footage and a receipt also showed that they had stopped at a pharmacy to buy medical supplies, including sanitary pads, at 10:21 p.m. John Kelly eventually dropped Esmeralda off at her home around 11 p.m., but she was still heavily bleeding, having been left alone in the car with him. A subsequent medical report on February 16th revealed that Esmeralda had suffered severe and brutal abuse, resulting in massive blood loss and hypovolemic shock. While this condition could have been treated, Esmeralda never received the life-saving medical attention she needed that night. Esmeralda's toxicology report revealed the presence of a synthetic gestagen, a key ingredient in abortion pills. However, it had already been established that Esmeralda was not pregnant. This substance is taken orally as a contraceptive and works by suppressing ovulation and fertilization. Given its presence in her body, it's likely that John Kelly, her teacher, had planned to engage in intimate relations with her. After a series of medical examinations, Esmeralda's body was finally laid to rest at the Albano Public Cemetery. Her family and friends, including Malala, bid her a sad farewell, remembering her as a kind and cheerful person. Her devastated parents couldn't help but replay the fateful evening in their minds, blaming themselves for trusting John Kelly with their daughter's care and allowing her to go for a walk with him. On June 4, 2023, prosecutors charged John Kelly Martinez, a math and physical education teacher, in connection with the death of Esmeralda Richiez after reconstructing the last hours of her life. 8 days later, on June 12, 2023, the LA Alagia Prosecutor's Office filed an indictment and requested a trial against Martinez and his cousin, Rubiel Milo Martinez, in the LA Alagracia Instructional Court. The trial was initially scheduled for August 23, 2023, but was postponed due to Storm Franklin and rescheduled for November 24, 2023. However, the judge later ordered that John Kelly Martinez be retried as the sole defendant in Esmeralda Richiez's death. The new trial was initially set to begin on January 9, 2024, but was rescheduled again because only half of the witnesses showed up. The trial is now scheduled to take place on February 1st and 6th, 2024, before the Collegiate Court of the Penitentiary Chamber of First Instance of La Altagracia. The defense attorney argued that the prosecution's case relied too heavily on the idea that the victim's parents were responsible for her death, rather than focusing on the actions of the defendant. The prosecution, on the other hand, presented a significant amount of evidence, including witness statements, expert testimonies, and physical evidence, to build a strong case against the defendant. During the trial, the defendant attempted to portray himself as a victim, claiming that his interactions with the victim on the night of her death were consensual. When Professor John Kelly Martinez brought Esmeralda home, she was alive and in good health. However, the court documents reveal that Martinez voluntarily inflicted severe injuries on Esmeralda, including lacerations, abrasions, and contusions, which ultimately led to her death due to acute internal and external bleeding and hemorrhagic shock, as confirmed by the autopsy report. Despite Martinez's statement in court, it had no impact on the judges or the audience. On March 14, 2024, Martinez, 36, was sentenced to 20 years in prison for violent conduct. He will serve his sentence at the Anamuya Correctional and Rehabilitation Center. Additionally, Rubiel Maro Martinez, the defendant's cousin and an accessory after the fact, was given a conditional enforcement measure requiring him to make regular court appearances in Hayward. Following the enforcement measures against Martinez and his cousin, the family's attorney, Raimundo Rosario, expressed satisfaction with the outcome and stated that the family would not pursue further investigation. Esmeralda's mother, Isabel Martinez, regretfully recalled allowing her daughter to walk with the teacher and 3 friends. She had previously spoken to the teacher on the phone, asking if he was a teacher, and he had confirmed that he was. She had trusted him to take care of her daughter, not knowing that he was a danger to her. The Ministry of Education offered support to the families of the deceased girl and the other girls who were with her on the day of the tragedy. They expressed hope that such cases would not happen again in the education community or in society. For the grieving parents, their fight for justice had just begun. A fun evening outing that included a beach visit had turned into a night of terror, resulting in the tragic death of Esmeralda Richiez, who suffered fatal injuries at the hands of the man entrusted with the care of children. Everyone involved in the evening's events bears some responsibility for what happened. Morala, however, was too afraid to confide in her parents due to their extreme strictness. We've all been there, afraid to speak up because we fear punishment or being misunderstood. But in this tragic case, fear triumphed, resulting in the devastating loss of a precious life. The case of Athena Strand. Athena Strand was born on May 25, 2015, in Duncan, Oklahoma, a small American town. Following her parents' divorce, her father relocated to Texas, while Athena remained with her mother in Oklahoma. Despite the distance, her father maintained regular contact, visiting her frequently, and her mother also made sure Athena spent quality time with him, given their amicable relationship. Later, both her parents remarried, and Athena gained 2 younger sisters, with whom she shared a strong bond, always seeking to spend as much time with them as possible. Athena was a cheerful child, always exuding positivity, with a passion for outdoor play and exploration. In late 2022, at the age of 7, she temporarily relocated to live with her father in Texas until the New Year holidays, after which she would return to her mother in Oklahoma. During her time in Texas, Athena attended a local elementary school. Her father's rural home, surrounded by woods and fields, provided the perfect setting for her to bond with her dad and his new wife, Elizabeth, in the beauty of nature. On November 30th, Athena returned home from school around 4:15 p.m., just like any other day. With her father and grandfather out hunting, she was left alone with Elizabeth. But that evening, Athena's mood was off, leading to an argument with Elizabeth. Upset, Athena retreated to her room, while Elizabeth headed to the kitchen to prepare dinner. 20 minutes later, Elizabeth went to call Athena for dinner, but she was nowhere to be found. Elizabeth searched the entire house and yard, but there was no sign of the girl. She then called her husband's relatives who lived nearby, but they claimed they hadn't seen Athena. Elizabeth then called her husband, explaining the situation, and he immediately told her to contact the police and rushed home. At 6:40, Elizabeth dialed 911, and officers arrived within 14 minutes. She recounted the events and shared her theory that Athena might have run away due to their argument. However, the girl's relatives remained skeptical, given Athena's age of 7 and her history of never straying far from home, especially at night when she was afraid of the dark. Initially, the police viewed Elizabeth with skepticism, primarily due to the 40-minute delay in reporting her child missing after realizing she was gone. However, after listening to her detailed account of searching the entire house and contacting relatives, they concluded that she was likely telling the truth. The officers promptly launched a search of the surrounding area, undeterred by the darkness, and meticulously combed through the forests and fields within a several-kilometer radius of the house. They focused their search on the area around the house, thinking Athena might have wandered off and got lost in the darkness, based on their main theory. While they also looked into the possibility of her being abducted, they didn't find any evidence to support this, since there was no sign of forced entry. Elizabeth didn't report hearing any noises or screams, and the neighbors didn't see anything suspicious that evening. Athena's relatives and concerned townspeople assisted the police in their search efforts. As soon as Athena's mother heard about her daughter's disappearance, she rushed to the scene. The search continued until almost 5 a.m., but they failed to find any signs of Athena. The area around the house, especially during dark hours, was difficult to access, which complicated the search. At 7 a.m., the police resumed their search, this time with more officers. As news of Athena's disappearance spread throughout the county, hundreds of volunteers joined the effort. Some volunteers searched the area on horseback and ATVs, while the police used drones and helicopters equipped with thermal cameras. Despite their efforts, Athena remained missing by the end of the day. The police were increasingly concerned for her life, given the onset of winter and the 50 degrees Fahrenheit temperature in Texas, which would have been challenging for Athena, who was wearing light clothing. On the third day, the police broadened their search to a radius of miles around the house, suspecting a potential criminal element in Athena's disappearance. Despite initial doubts that she had wandered off, they grew more convinced that she hadn't left the house voluntarily. Over the next few days, they scoured the surrounding area in all directions, covering several miles, but found no trace of the girl, as it seemed unlikely she could have walked that far without encountering anyone. Investigators sought to identify those near Athena's house that evening, a challenge due to the secluded location. However, they soon got a break. A courier service had delivered a package that same evening. FedEx led them to the responsible organization and the specific van, which was equipped with cameras, providing key surveillance footage. After rewinding the footage to the time when the van arrived at the house, investigators uncovered disturbing evidence. The footage showed the driver, later identified as 31-year-old Tanner Horner, pulling a girl who looked like Athena into the vehicle. The police promptly apprehended Tanner at his address on suspicion of abduction and took him in for questioning. Tanner confessed to delivering a package to Athena's house that evening. He hit her with his van while backing up, but she was conscious and uninjured. Athena told him her name, and they conversed. Panicked, Tanner put her in his van, unsure what to do. When Athena said she'd tell her father, Tanner's anxiety grew, fearing legal consequences if she told adults about the accident. After that, Tanner's bizarre confession left the investigators perplexed. He claimed that, in his words, killing her seemed the only viable option. First, he attempted to break her neck, but it didn't work, so he resorted to strangling her. Then, he transported her body to a nearby river and discarded it in the water. The police were naturally skeptical of this account, but Tanner provided them with the exact location where he had left Athena's body. They immediately went to the site and indeed found her remains. The news of the young girl's brutal murder sent shockwaves throughout the country, leaving her relatives and thousands of others stunned. As the case garnered widespread media attention, the public was horrified by the sheer cruelty of the crime. After the body was found, Tanner was charged with abduction and murder. As detectives awaited the medical examiner's report, they delved deeper into the criminal's identity, seeking to understand his motives. Tanner's version of events seemed utterly far-fetched. He claimed to have lightly struck the girl with his van, causing no serious harm. Yet, he was allegedly so terrified that he immediately decided to kill her, fearing that hitting a child without causing harm might only lead to his job loss. His story appeared highly improbable. Tanner, engaged with a year-old child, worked as an Uber driver and musician, performing in Fort Worth cafes. His social media showed a normal life, with photos of his child and musical performances. With no prior legal issues, there was no indication he was capable of cruel violence. 2 months prior to Athena's tragic death, the delivery man had shared photos on social media, showcasing heartwarming moments spent with his son and grandparents. The wait for the medical examiner's report, which was anticipated to clarify the exact sequence of events, dragged on for several weeks. During this time, Athena's grief-stricken parents took legal action against FedEx and the contracting company, alleging that they had failed to implement adequate employee screening measures, hence allowing Horner to continue working and paving the way for such a heinous crime. A devastating twist in this tragic tale emerged. The package Horner had delivered on that fateful evening was, in fact, a Christmas gift for Athena, a Barbie doll she had long coveted, which her parents had ordered for her. As the medical examiner's findings were made public, even more questions surfaced in the case. According to the document, the victim's death occurred within an hour of her abduction, with her body showing injuries of varying severity. The cause of death was asphyxiation. Initially, detectives believed that the killer, Horner, had abducted the girl to sexually assault her after spotting her near the house. However, medical experts found no evidence to support this theory, which puzzled the police. The detectives didn't believe the killer's account of events, as it lacked a logical explanation. They speculated that the perpetrator's initial plan was to sexually assault the girl, but something went awry. One theory is that after arguing with her father's wife, the victim went outside and was in the yard when Horner arrived to deliver a package. Noticing the girl alone and isolated, he saw an opportunity to act on his depraved fantasies. Horner could have lured the girl into his van through deception or attacked her to put her in the vehicle without a struggle. What happened next is unclear, with two main theories emerging. It's possible that Horner had planned to abduct the girl and take her far away from the house to commit his intended crimes. However, she may have started screaming or tried to escape, fearing capture, which led him to kill her. Afterwards, he dumped her body in the river. According to an alternative scenario, Horner might have engaged in inappropriate behavior towards the victim without physically touching her. In this case, a medical examination would not have revealed any evidence of sexual assault. The detectives stumbled upon an unexpected clue suggesting a sexual motive behind the crime. What was unusual about Horner was that he had no prior criminal record, which is rare in most cases. Typically, people who are capable of murder start with less severe crimes. The detective spent weeks meticulously investigating Horner's past, speaking to his relatives, friends, and acquaintances to uncover any hints of potential involvement in other crimes. Eventually, they made a breakthrough. The police identified several individuals who alleged they were victimized by Horner during their childhood. To protect the investigation, the authorities did not release the victims' identities or disclose full details of the incidents. However, it is known that one of the victims accused Horner of assaulting her 9 years prior. Additionally, he was charged with 3 counts of sexual assault involving minors in 2013, although it is unclear whether these incidents involved one or multiple victims. One of Horner's victims had been publicly sharing her story for years, describing how he assaulted her when she was 16. She used social media to raise awareness about Horner's criminal nature, but despite this, he faced no consequences and was not considered a suspect. The victim stated that for years, nobody believed her allegations. However, after Horner killed Athena, these allegations gained significant attention, revealing Horner's true character and possible motives. Horner faces multiple trials, including Athena's murder. A disturbing TikTok video shows him watching a bug being killed with a spray, his face showing an unsettling pleasure. This hints at sadistic tendencies, making his account of Athena's murder even more suspicious. Horner claimed he killed Athena to avoid punishment for a lesser crime, but this excuse seems absurd given his sadistic nature. Authorities are seeking the death penalty, backed by video footage and Horner's own testimony. His guilt is clear, and additional evidence may be presented during the trial. The case of Liga Skromane. Liga Skromane was born in 1986 in Latvia, where she grew up in a close-knit family with an older brother and a younger sister. She later moved to Ireland, but remained close to her family. It was there that she met her future husband, Andrew Jordan. Despite struggling to connect with new people, the couple married 5 years later and shared big plans for their future. Liga worked at a hotel and lived modestly, but dreamed of opening a yoga retreat center in Portugal. Andrew supported her idea, and they saved money for 4 years to make it a reality. In early 2018, Liga was suffering from a severe skin condition that was affecting her physical and mental well-being. Her sister Ilse invited her on a trip to help her overcome this condition and regain her emotional balance. In February 2018, Liga and Ilse traveled to Thiruvananthapuram, the capital of Kerala, India, where Liga could receive Ayurvedic treatment for depression. Ayurveda, recognized by the World Health Organization since 1985 as one of the most effective alternative medicine systems, offered a promising solution for Liga's health issues. It's important to note that Ayurveda is not a cure-all, but rather a complementary approach to achieving healthy longevity. Liga, 33, and her sister Ilse traveled to Kerala seeking spiritual growth and relief from depression at an Ayurveda center. Their 6-week treatment plan included yoga, meditation, herbal remedies, and personalized nutrition and massage guidance. On March 14th, Liga skipped a yoga class, citing a headache. When Ilse returned to their room, Liga was gone. With the hotel staff's help, Ilse discovered that Liga had left the hotel at 11:30 a.m. in casual clothing, taking an auto rickshaw to Kovalam Beach for a walk. However, Liga was nowhere to be found on the beach, despite Ilse's thorough search until nightfall. Ilse reported her sister's disappearance to the police, but they showed little concern, believing Liga would either be found or return on her own the next day. Although they registered a case, the investigation was sluggish, effectively stalled from the start. Ilse took her sister Liga on a trip to India to share with her the country she loved so deeply. Tragically, the trip took a devastating turn. When the Indian police failed to take action for several days, Ilse decided to take matters into her own hands and began searching for Liga. She received support from friends and also informed her husband Andrew about Liga's disappearance, prompting him to fly to India immediately. After Liga went missing, her husband Andrew Jordan and sister Ilse launched a campaign to find her, reaching out to the local press and creating an online appeal. Ilse also tweeted to India's Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj, pleading for help and offering a 100,000 rupee reward to anyone with information about Liga's disappearance. Ilse and her friend Alexa, who had flown to India to help with the search, put up posters and distributed flyers in the Kovalam Beach area where Liga was last seen. Many locals joined the search efforts. However, it's important to note that Liga struggled with depression and found it difficult to interact with strangers. On the day she vanished, she took an auto rickshaw to the beach and was never seen again. At the time, she had about 3,000 rupees with her, but no passport, which meant she couldn't leave the country. Ashok Kumar, the head of the local police station, claimed that they had no leads in Liga's disappearance. Initially, the police believed she might have gone on a drinking binge or eloped and would eventually return on her own. However, persistent requests for help from Ilse and Andrew prompted the police to launch a search operation in the Kovalam Beach area where Liga was last seen. Although a woman's body was found washed ashore in Kanyakumari district, it was not identified as Liga's. Andrew suspected that Liga had been kidnapped by local gangs to be sold, and he attempted to infiltrate these gangs to gather more information. However, he was exposed and warned that if he continued to contact the gangs, he would have to leave the country. A month after Liga's disappearance, there were still no leads to her whereabouts. Ilse continued to search for her sister, visiting Kovalam Beach daily and observing people. She developed a theory that the only way to leave the beach unnoticed was by boat. Andrew returned to India on April 17, 2018, and joined Ilse in a new effort to find Liga, but her body remained unfound. The search for Liga was made more challenging due to her being a tourist and a citizen of another country. The Latvian Foreign Ministry maintained close contact with Liga's family and collaborated with the Indian authorities throughout the search process. The Latvian embassy also reached out to the Indian Foreign Ministry for special assistance in finding Liga. Additionally, the honorary consul of Latvia in India, whose jurisdiction includes the region where Liga went missing, was involved in the search efforts. At the request of the Coral State government, the Indian Navy and Air Force participated in the search operation. The search effort was extensive, utilizing an AN-32 transport plane, Gemini inflatable boats, underwater sonar, and 5 deep-sea divers. Unfortunately, despite these efforts, Liga remained missing and the desired outcome was not achieved. By this point, everyone in the local community was aware of the missing tourist from Latvia and was supporting and sympathizing with Andrew and Ilse. On April 20th, 2018, Ila received the most awaited yet devastating call of her life. A body had been found in the mangrove jungle. She and Andrew rushed to the designated spot where the police were waiting to take them to the scene by boat. Elsa's heart was racing as she felt the overwhelming horror of the situation. As they arrived, Elsa was met with a gruesome sight. She recognized her sister's clothes, including the shirt and leggings, on the body. However, the jacket and shoes did not belong to Liga. It remained a mystery how Liga had ended up in this remote location, accessible only by going through Panatur from Samudra Beach. 2 women came forward, confirming that they had seen Liga traveling alone into the mangrove forest. But the question remained, why would a girl struggling with depression, already alone, take a boat to such a remote and inaccessible place in the forest? The body was taken to the Medical College Hospital for an autopsy, which was recorded on video. The police stated that they couldn't confirm the identity of the body until DNA analysis was complete. According to the city police commissioner, the body was severely mutilated, with the head found nearby. Although the police have tentatively identified the deceased as Liga, a missing tourist, they need DNA confirmation. Supporting the investigators' conclusion is the fact that Liga's relatives identified the victim by her hair and clothes. One possible theory, according to India's rescue services, is that Liga might have been poisoned by accidentally or intentionally eating the fruit of poisonous pong-pong trees found in the mangrove forest. Between 1989 and 1999, over 500 people died from poisoning by these fruits in Kerala alone. The idea initially seemed absurd, given the body was found hanging upside down, without a head. However, if Liga had been poisoned, her body would likely have been in a different position, and her head would have been in place. Indian authorities were spouting absurdities based on misinformation about Liga's complex psychological issues. The investigators also considered the possibility that Liga had willingly abandoned her life. Ilse was concerned that the police would try to cover up her sister's murder by claiming she had voluntarily ended her life, despite the presence of a rope at the scene, which suggested the hiker had hanged herself. Elsa demanded a credible explanation for the missing head, and Ilse sarcastically retorted, "Don't tell me it's just lost." Here are the forensic test results that Ilse and the public were waiting for. The evidence is overwhelming. The autopsy reveals that Liga Skoma was strangled to death by multiple people during a violent attack. There were blood pools in her brain, bruising on her neck, and external injuries on her body, likely sustained during the struggle. Although the body was decomposing, the characteristic injuries on her throat cartilage indicate that someone forcefully squeezed her throat. The trauma was severe and fatal. Blood clots in her brain confirmed strangulation, and bruises were found on her neck and legs, with a total of 9 wounds recorded on her body. Based on the autopsy results, the police no longer consider Liga's death to be voluntary. Instead, they believe she was murdered after putting up a struggle. Ilse, Liga's sister, felt a sense of relief that the police were now taking the case seriously and hoped they would soon find the killers. As part of their investigation, the police started questioning local drug dealers and card players. They also spoke to local residents, two of whom reported seeing Liga walking alone to the area where her body was later discovered. However, the police had doubts about the credibility of these eyewitnesses. Liga's family has criticized the Indian police, accusing them of incompetence. They believe that if the police had launched a search for Liga immediately, the tragedy might have been prevented. The 33-year-old Latvian tourist is thought to have been kidnapped from a nearby beach, taken by boat, and then strangled. A special team of investigators has been formed to find those responsible for the crime. So far, around 40 suspects have been questioned, and arrests are expected to be made in the coming days once the authorities have gathered sufficient evidence. The Indian police conducted an investigation that led to the arrest of two men who were accused of murdering Liga Skron. According to the police, Liga Skron was lured by the two men, who then subjected her to physical abuse before dismembering her body. The two alleged assailants, now in custody, were local dealers of illegal substances. Both suspects, who were also pimps, fully confessed to the crime while under interrogation. However, the autopsy did not provide much evidence due to the advanced state of decomposition of Liga Skron's body. Andrew Jordan filed a petition in Superior Court to review a felony murder case, suspecting that more people were involved in the woman's murder. He noted that both defendants had recanted their guilty pleas, suggesting that they may have confessed due to torture, a common practice in India. However, the Supreme Court of India denied the murdered woman's common-law husband a review of the case, citing a lack of direct evidence. Andrew was outraged when the trial was postponed for 2 months. He had previously accused the authorities and police of incompetence and attempting to cover up the murder to avoid scaring off tourists. The suspect's lawyers requested and received a postponement, which they are legally entitled to do once without providing a reason. Andrew believed that the more the case was delayed, the more likely it was that the investigation was flawed. Despite his concerns, both suspects remained in custody. An investigation into Liga Skron's murder revealed that two men, Umesh, 32, and Udayakumar, 28, offered her drugs, specifically Ligaskani weed, and then strangled and decapitated her after she was incapacitated. The two suspects were arrested and found to have a history of committing similar crimes on multiple occasions. They worked for a food delivery company in Kerala's capital city and moonlighted as illegal tour guides. Umesh and Udayakumar have been charged with multiple crimes, including destruction of evidence, murder, poisoning, kidnapping, and rape. The location where Liga's body was discovered had previously been used by Umesh as a meeting spot for his male clients. He has a long history of criminal activity, with 13 cases filed against him, including 6 for sexual assault and 1 for attempted murder. Several of Umesh's victims have come forward to testify against him. Multiple witnesses reported seeing Liga with the two men in the area. Initially, they denied any involvement, but after Liga's body was found, they confessed to the murder, which was committed during an act of violence. The suspects were arrested, but initially claimed they only saw Liga in Kovalam. After repeated questioning, they eventually pleaded guilty. On December 6, 2022, the court sentenced the two men to life in prison and ordered them to pay 65,000 rupees each in compensation to Ilsa, Liga's sister. India has seen a surge in violent crimes against young girls, with a high number of sexual offenses committed against minors. In response, the government has introduced the death penalty to address the acute problem of crime in the country. The persistence of Liga's relatives, particularly her sister, and the involvement of the press and an influential MP were crucial in ensuring the case was thoroughly investigated. Initially, the local police were not taking the case seriously, suggesting that Liga may have voluntarily disappeared. This is not an isolated incident in this area, where similar cases have occurred before. The case of Paige Bergfeld. After high school, Paige attended the University of Florida's nursing school, where she met Howard Bigler. They started dating after realizing their mutual feelings for each other. After graduating with a nursing degree, Paige returned to Colorado to live with her family. In 1995, she and Howard got married. At first, they seemed like a happy couple, sharing many common interests and views. However, they had a significant disagreement that eventually led to their divorce. Paige wanted to have a child and start a family, but Howard didn't share her desire. This issue caused frequent arguments and discussions, but they couldn't find a compromise. In 1997, they decided to divorce. Despite this, they remained friends due to their strong connection. Paige later married Rob Dixon, but that marriage also ended in divorce. After her second divorce, Paige reconnected with Howard. He claimed to be one of the last people to see her alive. On the 28th, Howard and Paige, who were previously married, met in Eagle County, Colorado, to attend to personal matters. They spent Thursday together, after which they returned to their separate homes. Following their meeting, they continued to stay in touch through phone calls. Later, when Paige went missing, Howard quickly reached out to emergency services to report his concerns. During the call, he expressed his deep worry and belief that something terrible might have happened to her. Howard mentioned that Paige was a devoted mother who would never abandon her children without a valid reason. A recording of the call confirmed this, and cell tower data verified that Howard was in the Denver, Colorado area on the day Paige disappeared, which is a significant distance from where she was last seen. This evidence led the police to rule Howard out as a suspect. The investigation then focused on Paige's relationship with her second husband, Rob Dixon, and uncovered several suspicious incidents that required further investigation. Paige had previously reported her husband Rob to the police twice for harassment during their marriage. Before marrying Rob, Paige worked at a strip club in Denver, where she met him. Rob came from a wealthy family and had inherited a significant fortune. The two fell in love and got married in 1998. The couple settled in a luxurious home in Colorado, where Paige realized her dream of becoming a mother. Within a few years, they had 3 children who became the center of Paige's life. The early years of their marriage seemed happy, with the couple enjoying a luxurious lifestyle. However, things took a turn for the worse due to Rob's financial difficulties. Rob's family businesses faced severe issues, leading to a significant decline in their economic situation. As a result, Rob was forced to file for bankruptcy, which triggered a deep family crisis. By 2004, tensions had escalated to the point where Paige called emergency services twice. The first time, she reported that Rob had threatened to kill her and their children, but when the police arrived, they claimed to have resolved their issues. A year later, Paige reported Rob for assaulting her while she was holding their youngest child. Rob was arrested and charged with third-degree assault. He eventually pleaded guilty to 1 count of molestation, but the trial was dismissed and he avoided jail time. The couple's relationship continued to deteriorate, leading them to separate. Rob then moved to Pennsylvania. During the investigation into Paige's disappearance, Rob was interviewed to establish his alibi for that day. He claimed to have been at home and could not have harmed her. The investigators could not find any evidence to implicate Rob in her disappearance. In fact, Rob actively participated in the search for Paige. The investigating officers left no stone unturned in their effort to find clues and solve the mystery of the missing mother. The investigation into Paige's disappearance began with a thorough examination of her car. It was hoped that evidence in the car could help locate her or provide clues about what had happened. Sergeant Weiler of the County Sheriff's Department noted that arson is often used to destroy evidence, but in this case, the examination of the vehicle yielded valuable information. The driver's seat was found to be pushed back as far as it would go, indicating that the last person to drive the car was a tall individual, inconsistent with Paige's short stature. The trunk of the car contained Paige's notebook, with pages torn out from June 26 to June 29. As time passed, the search for Paige became increasingly urgent. A break in the case came when a driver stopped on a highway southeast of town to fix a flat tire and discovered a checkbook lying nearby. He reported it to the authorities, who then searched the area and found additional items belonging to Paige, including medical records and insurance cards. Sergeant Weiler's investigation into Paige Bergfeld's disappearance took a dramatic turn when he found a business card on the road, leading him to a shocking discovery. Paige was secretly working as an escort under the alias Carrie. This revelation completely upended the investigation, as it revealed a side of Paige's life that her loved ones knew nothing about. Previously, it was believed that Paige was a devoted mother who worked hard to provide for her children after her divorce. She had started her own children's clothing business, taught dance lessons, and sold kitchen supplies. Despite her busy schedule, she always made time for her children and was actively involved in their school activities. However, the discovery of the secret phone Paige used for her escort work revealed a completely different picture. This phone became a crucial piece of evidence, leading police to unravel a complex mystery that was far more sinister than anyone had initially suspected. The investigation into Paige's disappearance led to more questions than answers. What prompted a responsible mother and successful businesswoman to lead a secret life? And how was this double life connected to her vanishing? These questions took center stage in the investigation, adding a new layer of mystery. To get to the bottom of things, detectives analyzed Paige's cell phone, found in her car, and examined her contacts and calls from the hours leading up to her disappearance. The last call made from her phone was on June 28th around 9 p.m. This analysis led investigators to identify 7 suspects, one of whom was Lester Ralph Jones. Jones's criminal record raised red flags, particularly his history of violence against women and a previous kidnapping conviction that earned him a 5-year prison sentence. However, it wasn't the only concerning aspect. Jones's white car matched the description of the vehicle seen by Carol, Paige's friend. Carol shared a crucial detail with detectives. Paige had once approached her car, only to find a white car blocking her driveway. Enraged, Paige got behind the wheel to turn around, but the cars collided. The unknown driver quickly fled the scene. Investigators suspected that Lester might have been obsessed with Paige and was stalking her after discovering that he had tried to book an appointment with her for intimate services on the day before she vanished. When questioned, Lester denied any involvement in her disappearance and provided fingerprints and DNA samples. However, a search of his home turned up several incriminating items, including a prepaid phone, wigs, Viagra, a sheet with an escort services phone number, and women's lingerie in various sizes. The prepaid phone caught the investigators' attention due to suspicious calls made to Paige's phone on the day she disappeared. Lester initially denied owning a second phone, which proved to be a lie. Using the phone's packaging found at his home, police traced the purchase to a supermarket on North Avenue. The store's security footage showed Lester buying the phone, which he refused to acknowledge when confronted with the evidence. Lester Jones became the main suspect in Paige's disappearance, but the police couldn't find enough concrete evidence to charge him. They continued to investigate and search for Paige's body, hoping to find proof of his guilt. However, the case stalled for several years, leaving Paige's family and loved ones in a state of unbearable grief. As time passed, the search seemed increasingly futile, and the hope of finding Paige alive began to fade. In 2012, a hiker stumbled upon human remains in a ravine in Delta County, surprisingly close to where Paige's personal belongings had been found 5 years prior. Investigators were nearly certain the body was that of a young mother, and DNA testing confirmed it was indeed Paige. Unfortunately, her story ended in tragedy. The condition of the body made it impossible to determine the exact cause of death, but it was clear she had suffered a brutal beating with multiple broken bones, particularly in her face. It was concluded that her injuries ultimately led to her death. The discovery of Paige's body added a horrific layer to the story. It's believed that her body was buried, but years of soil erosion eventually brought it to the surface, which may explain why it wasn't found sooner. The discovery led to a breakthrough in Lester Ralph Jones's case, which had stalled for years. In November 2014, he was charged with kidnapping, first-degree murder, and second-degree murder. The trial finally began in July 2016 and lasted 22 days. Prosecutors claimed that Lester's frustration over being unable to see Paige, combined with his history of violence against women, motivated the crime. The prosecution's key witness, Lester's ex-wife Lisa, testified about his violent past. She described how Lester kidnapped and threatened to kill her at gunpoint in the late 1990s after she ended their relationship. On one occasion, he attacked her and her partner, shooting the latter in the head. A month later, Lester made another threat, warning her that she would be thrown into a lake. Lisa managed to escape and contacted the police, leading to Lester's arrest on charges of kidnapping and assault. In contrast, Lester's defense attorneys argued that the police had wrongly accused an innocent man and suggested that other clients of Paige's may have had motives for the crime. However, they failed to provide convincing evidence linking anyone else to the murder. Lester's current wife testified, stating that although her husband used an escort service, her faith prevented her from leaving him. Nevertheless, she could not provide an alibi for him and identified him in a supermarket surveillance video where he bought a disposable phone. Lester's first trial ended in a mistrial on September 9, 2016, when the jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict. However, the district attorney was convinced of Lester's guilt and continued to investigate and re-examine the evidence. After several weeks, on November 21, 2016, the jury finally reached a verdict, finding Lester guilty of all charges related to Paige's death. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without parole. Lester's defense team appealed the sentence, but an appeals court panel upheld the conviction and sentence in June 2022. Paige's funeral was held on April 28, 2012. Her obituary remembered her as a beautiful and radiant woman with a smile that lit up the room. Her tragic death has had a lasting impact on her family and friends, leaving her 3 children without their loving mother and support. The tragic case of Paige captured the nation's attention and spanned many years, but through the unwavering dedication of law enforcement relatives, justice was finally served. Lester Ralph Jones was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, ensuring he can no longer harm innocent people. Paige's courageous story stands as a powerful reminder of the significance of persisting in the pursuit of justice, no matter how long and arduous the journey may be. Her memory will forever be cherished by those who knew and loved her. The case of Sherry Papapini. Sherry and Keith first met in middle school, when Keith was in 7th grade and Sherry was in 8th. They shared their first kiss, and their friendship quickly blossomed into a close bond that lasted throughout their teenage years. However, as they grew older, they eventually lost touch and went their separate ways. Years later, Sherry had moved on with her life and got married to another man in 2006. However, the marriage was short-lived and ended in divorce after just 2 years. After her divorce, Sherry found herself single once again, unaware that fate was about to bring her and Keith back together. One day, Sherry unexpectedly ran into Keith, and the old spark was instantly rekindled. The time they had spent apart had brought them both growth and maturity, and they quickly realized just how much they had missed each other. They decided to give their love another chance and arranged a date, from which their connection continued to grow stronger with each passing day. Within a year of rekindling their romance, Keith and Sherry knew they were meant to be together. They got married in 2009 and started a family, having 2 children. They settled in Redding, California, where Sherry became a stay-at-home mom after quitting her job in telecommunications, while Keith continued to work at Best Buy as a member of the Geek Squad. The Papapini family appeared to have the perfect life. But on November 2nd, 2016, that illusion was shattered when Keith Papini came home to find his wife, Sherry, missing. Sherry's absence was unusual because she was always at home when Keith returned from work. At first, Keith thought she might have gone for a walk, but as time passed and she failed to return, he grew increasingly worried. He called the daycare center where their children attended school to see if Sherry had picked them up, but the school secretary told him she hadn't. Keith's concern for Sherry deepened, and he decided to use the Find My iPhone app on his phone to try to locate her. The app revealed that Sherry's phone was at the end of their driveway. Keith rushed outside and searched the area, only to find Sherry's phone lying on the ground with her headphones nearby. Most disturbingly, there were strands of hair tangled in the headphones. Keith immediately contacted the Shasta County Sheriff's Office, and they took Sherry's disappearance seriously from the start. The FBI was involved in the investigation from the beginning. Keith was resolute in his quest to raise awareness about Sherry's disappearance and begged for her safe return. He understood the significance of sharing Sherry's name and image with the public, so he collaborated with the media to garner support and aid in the search. The media played a crucial role in publicizing Sherry's story, and her picturesque appearance, with her blonde hair and blue eyes, captivated the nation. News outlets eagerly covered every aspect of her case, and her seemingly perfect life as a devoted wife and mother only added to the mystery surrounding her sudden vanishing. As news of Sherry's disappearance spread, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office received a flood of tips. Despite the numerous leads, however, none yielded any concrete results in the ongoing search for Sherry. As the investigation into Sherry's disappearance progressed, detectives scrutinized her phone records, searching for any leads. A thorough review of her messages revealed a contentious text exchange between Sherry and her husband, Keith, which had taken place several months earlier. The tone of this conversation sparked suspicion among the police, prompting them to consider the possibility that Keith might be implicated in Sherry's vanishing. Although Keith had now become a person of interest, he fully cooperated with the authorities, even offering to take a polygraph test in an effort to dispel any doubts about his involvement. The results of the polygraph examination ultimately cleared Keith of any suspicion. In addition to the text messages exchanged between Keith and Sherry, investigators discovered several texts on Sherry's phone from men who had used female names. Further examination suggested that Sherry was planning to leave Keith on November 10, 2016. The police located one of these men and questioned him about Sherry's whereabouts. According to the man, he had met Sherry 5 years earlier at a restaurant during a work conference she was attending. Although the man claimed he didn't know where Sherry was, he provided insight into her relationship with Keith. During the interview, the man revealed that Sherry held Keith in low regard and was afraid of him. He alleged that Keith was violent and abusive, often locking Sherry up in their home. After a man who knew Sherry accused her husband Keith of being abusive, the police launched an investigation to determine if the accusations were true. Although they questioned friends and neighbors, they found no significant evidence to suggest Keith was violent. However, during these interviews, the police discovered that Sherry had a reputation among her friends for being dramatic and seeking attention. This led them to suspect that the abuse allegations might be overstated or even fabricated. On Thanksgiving morning, November 24, 2016, just days after Sherry Papapini went missing, the police received a call at 4:32 a.m. The caller reported a woman in distress on the side of I-5, prompting the officers to rush to the scene. When they arrived, they found a woman bound with chains and zip ties. Due to her disheveled appearance, it took the officers a few moments to identify her as Sherry Papapini, who had been missing for several days. The officers were greatly relieved to discover Sherry still alive, and they immediately began freeing her from her restraints. They carefully removed her chains and zip ties, taking great care not to cause her any further harm. Once she was finally free, the officers promptly transported Sherry to the hospital so she could receive the medical attention she desperately needed. Upon her arrival at the hospital, the full extent of Sherry's terrifying ordeal became painfully clear. Her body was covered in numerous bruises. Her hair had been cut noticeably shorter, and a distinct burn mark was visible on her arm. Additionally, she had a severe rash on her arm, and her weight had plummeted to a dangerous 87 pounds. While Sherry was recovering at Woodland Memorial Hospital, the police tried to question her, but she was too distraught to provide any information. Sherry insisted that her husband Keith be present during the interview, so he was allowed to stay in the room as she described the incident. Sherry explained that she was out jogging when a dark-colored SUV, driven by two women, pulled up beside her. The older woman got out of the vehicle, pointed a gun at her, and approached her. The younger woman stayed in the car. Sherry said she was forced against her will into the back of the vehicle. Before getting in, Sherry deliberately left her phone and headphones on the driveway, along with some strands of her hair, as a signal to Keith that something was wrong. Sherry shared the details of her kidnapping with the police and her husband Keith. She explained that she kept dozing off in the back of the SUV, making it difficult to keep track of time during the journey. Sherry also mentioned that the two women had covered her face with something, preventing her from seeing her surroundings. According to Sherry, the women told her they had abducted her because a man wanted to buy her and she was being taken to meet him. However, they didn't reveal the man's identity or location. Sherry was terrified and worried about her situation, as she had no idea where she was being taken or what would happen to her while she was being held captive. Sherry alleged that one of the two women with whom she was being held captive physically abused her. This woman repeatedly hit Sherry, causing her various injuries. Sherry also claimed that this woman tattooed her right shoulder with the word Exodus, supposedly to make her more appealing to a buyer who was allegedly a police officer. Additionally, Sherry stated that her captors constantly played mariachi music, which she found disturbing and disorienting. The constant barrage of this music contributed to the oppressive atmosphere of her captivity, making it feel even more isolating. Sherry was imprisoned in a single room with a boarded-up window. She described the harsh living conditions, including a closet where she was chained. This closet doubled as a bathroom, with a bucket that she used for urination and defecation. About 3 weeks into her captivity, Sherry heard a gunshot. After that, she never saw the older Hispanic woman again, which raised many questions in her mind. Was she dead? The younger woman, who had remained silent until then, took charge. She ordered Sherry to get into a car, and they drove along I-5. The car suddenly stopped, and Sherry was startled. She looked around, trying to make sense of the situation. Then, the younger woman told Sherry to get out of the vehicle. Uncertain and frightened, Sherry cautiously obeyed. As she stepped out of the car, she felt a mix of fear and excitement. Was this her chance to escape, or was she being led into an even more dangerous situation? She was left with more questions and uncertainty. After Sherry was found safe on the side of I-5, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office held a press conference to announce her return. During the conference, the police announced that Sherry had been abducted by two women of Hispanic origin, sparking widespread concern among the public. Once settled back at home after her abduction, Sherry began attending therapy sessions. As a California resident, she became eligible for the state's Victim Compensation Fund, which uses public funds to help pay for victims' therapy in the aftermath of an abduction. Sherry subsequently spent a significant amount of time at home, avoiding going out as frequently as she had before her abduction. 1 year after Sherry was abducted, the police released a composite sketch of two Hispanic women suspected of being involved in the crime. Despite this breakthrough, no new leads emerged. Furthermore, the police announced that they had found male DNA on Sherry's underwear, which she had on when she was discovered on the side of I-5. They clarified that this DNA sample did not belong to Sherry's husband, Keith. 2 years had elapsed since Sherry's abduction, and the police were still unable to find a match for the male DNA found on her underwear, despite their ongoing efforts. The investigation remained stagnant, with no new leads, and the case continued to go unsolved. The police investigating Sherry's case requested permission to use familial DNA techniques to identify the source of the unknown DNA evidence. This cutting-edge approach enabled them to use the existing DNA profile to find potential relatives of the donor. By analyzing DNA evidence, familial DNA testing helps investigators determine if it matches any family members of a suspect, making it a powerful tool in criminal investigations. It works by identifying genetic markers shared among family members, allowing investigators to narrow down the list of potential suspects and establish possible familial links. When the police obtained a familial DNA match on the male DNA found in Sherry's underwear, they were surprised to discover it belonged to a close relative of James Ray's, Sherry's ex-boyfriend. This breakthrough raised several questions and became a crucial turning point in the investigation, leading the police to wonder if Sherry's ex-boyfriend might have been involved in her abduction in June 2020. Investigators collected a soda bottle from James's trash and sent it to the forensic lab for DNA analysis. The lab conducted tests on the soda bottle, and, a month later, a lab technician contacted the police to inform them that James Rice's DNA matched the sample found on Sherry's underwear on the day her body was discovered. After receiving the DNA match, the police interviewed James Rice, a sports shop employee, at his home in Costa Mesa, California, about Sherry's case. James had previously dated Sherry about 10 years prior, and he claimed that the last time he saw her was a year after their breakup. He stated that he had heard rumors about her disappearance and subsequent safe return. During the police interview, James initially denied any involvement in Sherry's disappearance. However, he eventually admitted to being friends with her, despite their breakup 10 years prior. James claimed that he played a role in Sherry's disappearance, but not in her kidnapping. Instead, he said he was helping a friend in need. According to James, Sherry had contacted him, saying she was trying to escape her abusive husband, Keith. James told the police that on November 2nd, 2016, one of his friends had rented a car for him. The next day, he used this car to pick up Sherry. James said Sherry got into the back seat and lay down during the drive back to Costa Mesa. During her stay at James' house, Sherry mostly stayed in the bedroom, and James continued with his daily routine. Occasionally, Sherry would help with cleaning and cooking. She even boarded up the bedroom window, reportedly because she wanted the room door. While living with James, Sherry made a conscious effort to lose weight by drastically reducing her food intake. James reported to the police that Sherry had asked him to assist her in harming herself, including hitting herself hard enough to cause bruises. On one occasion, Sherry asked James to shoot a hockey puck at her knee, despite his discomfort with the request. Although he was hesitant, James ultimately agreed to participate in this harmful behavior with Sherry. James confessed to branding Sherry with the word Exodus on her right shoulder. He explained that they had bought a wood-burning tool from Hobby Lobby specifically for that purpose. One day, Sherry suddenly told James that she was leaving his house. Before she left, Sherry asked James to get chains and zip ties and instructed him to restrain her securely before driving her back to Reading, California. During the drive, Sherry told James to pull over, which he did. She then jumped out of the vehicle, and James drove away. When the police questioned James about the 2 Hispanic women Sherry claimed had kidnapped her, he denied having any knowledge of what she was talking about. However, when the police searched James's house, they were surprised to find several rooms that matched the descriptions Sherry had provided of her captivity. Notably, James's bedroom and closet closely matched a drawing Sherry had made of the rooms she was held in, and a table in James's house was similar to one Sherry had described in her initial police interviews. The police then scheduled a follow-up interview with Sherry and her husband Keith at the police station, having gathered significant evidence suggesting that Sherry had faked her own abduction. Before confronting Sherry with this evidence, the police asked if she wanted Keith to leave the room. Sherry did not respond, so the police left the couple alone for a few minutes before proceeding with the interview. During this time, Sherry confessed to Keith that she didn't want the authorities to catch the Hispanic woman who had kidnapped her. Sherry felt indebted to this woman because she had let her go, and therefore didn't want to file a complaint against her. Keith listened attentively to Sherry's reasoning, but he grew concerned as he thought she wasn't thinking clearly and was getting frightened. He stressed that regardless of Sherry's decision not to press charges, the woman would still have to face the consequences of her actions. The police re-entered the interview room, informing Sherry and Keith that they had obtained a familial DNA match on the male DNA found on Sherry's clothing. The name they mentioned was James Rice, Sherry's former boyfriend. Upon hearing the name, Keith had a physical reaction, recognizing James as Sherry's ex-partner. Police told Sherry and Keith that James, her ex, passed a polygraph test, and they believed he was telling the truth. They thought Sherry staged her abduction, citing her deliberate weight loss and a rash from cleaning supplies at James's place. They also claimed James branded her with a wooden tool from Hobby Lobby and that her broken nose was self-inflicted with a hockey stick. Sherry kept a straight face despite evidence she staged her abduction, claiming she hadn't seen James since his brother's funeral years ago. But police knew she was lying, thanks to James' insider info. On March 3, 2022, Sherry was arrested by the FBI for lying and faking her abduction. 6 weeks after arrest, Sherry signed a plea deal, admitting to orchestrating her kidnapping. She received an 18-month prison sentence and a $300,000 fine, despite her attorney's request for a shorter sentence. The judge called Sherry a manipulator and liar. He's certain she'd have kept lying if caught. He punished her to deter others, noting she exploited victims' funds, disability payments, and a GoFundMe account, getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sherry addressed the court during her sentencing hearing, expressing her remorse and apologizing to the numerous people who had suffered due to her actions. She openly acknowledged her guilt, stating that she was responsible for lying and bringing dishonor upon herself and those around her. In August of 2023, Sherry was granted her release and was placed in a halfway house. Keith and Sherry separated on the day she was arrested in March 2022, and a few days after Sherry pled guilty, the following month, Keith filed for divorce and also sued for full custody of their children.